What's up, guys? A lot of people have been asking me, how do I record and edit my videos? So I figured it's a little hard for me to answer that question, like in comments or messages. So I figured I'd make a video on how I edit and transcribe all my music and all the little tips and tricks that I have that I put in my videos. So let's go and get started. So first things first, I record the video with my headphones. I normally just use AirPods, and I play reps until I get a clean rep that I'm happy with, and then I import that clean rep into my editing software, which I use Wondershare Filmora. And so I'll just drag that into my timeline, and there it is. And then what I do after that is I screen record the video of the snare break that I played, like of the group playing it. So in this case, it was the Boston video. How you screen record in Filmora is you go to File, Record Media, and Record PC Screen, and then you just play the YouTube video and it screen records it for you. I'm not going to do that because I'm screen recording currently. So once you finish that, you drag that into the timeline, and then what you want to do is just line up the audio to their audio, which I've kind of gotten good at just like knowing where it goes, because if you look at the end here, there's two notes and you can see like the audio like visually down in the timeline. So you just kind of want to line those up as best as you can. It's kind of like give or take. Sometimes it sounds clean and the audio doesn't look like it's lined up like physically, so you just kind of got to trust your ears, but also the visuals do help. So what we got going on here is the Boston video is kind of in the way of my video, and that's just because it's in landscape. So you go here and you change the aspect ratio to portrait for Reels or TikTok, shorts, all that stuff. And I normally drag it up to the top and put my video here, and we'll get to like cropping and stuff soon, but for now, here's the rep. Cool, so I normally just listen to it before I go ahead and start editing everything crazy, you know, because I want to make sure that it's a good rep. For me, that's pretty good, I think. Obviously, I've gotten good at just like kind of knowing like how I need to balance the audio, right? So for this sake, like I normally make the drumline that I'm playing with a little bit louder than me, just because I'm one snare drummer and they're 9. So you want to be able to, I like to kind of blend my sound into theirs rather than just like an overbearing sound of my pad, you know. So I typically leave mine a little bit quieter so I can like blend in with the line, and so it sounds cleaner, right? Because the louder I am, the more it's just like, is that really clean? You know, it's kind of hard to tell just because I'm overbalanced the whole time. So this is a pretty good balance for me, at least for the sake of this video. I already posted this break, so we're good there. But I'm just showing you how to edit. So the next thing I do is I kind of set up the layout that I want. So I typically find a background that I like to use for the video, like the background that is behind my sheet music. Like for this video, I'm just going to use a simple blue background, and I just go to Google and I look up simple blue background or abstract blue background or some sort of like blue wallpaper, you know what I mean? And I'm using blue just because their uniforms are blue, so it kind of looks good. You can change the colors a little bit, so I'm going to add a little bit of green to it by going over here to, here we go, curves, and then go to green, and just drag it this way a little bit, so it becomes a little bit more teal, which kind of matches their color of uniform, if you see. So that's the background that I'm going to be using for the scrolling sheet music, which we're going to get to in a second. First, I like to make myself a little bit bigger, depending on how I record and how far away my camera is, but I typically like to go around this size right here, and then as you see now my head's kind of cropped off. So I can go to the video, I right click on here, and then go to crop and zoom and custom, and you can go to any size you want. I typically make it a little thinner, as long as you can still see the performers in the video is all I really care about. And if there's a logo at the bottom of like whoever's video this is, then I like to leave that in there. like our bass does a lot, but in this video there's nothing. So as long as you can see the drums, their hands, and their faces, then we're good. So I make it a little thinner, and I drag it up all the way to the top, and then I go ahead and I give that a border by going to effects, and then it's in borders. I have all my stuff that I use favorited, but if you just search border, it's normally the first one that pops up. And then so it adds a border, but I like it to just be the bottom. So what I do is I make it a little bit bigger. I typically go 104%, and then I drag it up if I need to. And then what that does is it just puts a little white line border in between their video and my video. And then I typically add like a drop shadow. I make sure that it's 180 degrees, and I make sure it's black. Maybe blur it a little bit more. That's pretty good. So in the video of me, I already edited like the colors and stuff to make my skin and stuff pop, and the background a little bit more dark. But I mean, you kind of just go over to the color, and you just kind of edit it how you want. I typically just like move around sliders until it looks good, to be honest. I don't know a whole lot about like color grading or anything, but I just like move the temperature up, the vibrance up a little bit, saturation up, exposure down, brightness a tiny bit down, contrast up, shadows down, and then the black down. And I think that, and then I normally sharpen it, but as you see, I already did that, so now it just looks like crazy. So we're just gonna reset everything back to normal. Next up, how do you get the floating pad? One of my more common questions. I'm gonna show you how to do that right now. So in this editing software, you have the ability to do draw masks. I don't know about other editing softwares. I'm sure you can do it in Adobe. I don't know about DaVinci Resolve. I know people use that a lot. I'm sure you probably can. I just haven't really used it before. I'm sure you can do that in both. So anyway, how I do it in Filmora is I click on the video that I want to mask, which is obviously my video, and I go over here to mask, and I click draw mask, and then you kind of just like can draw an area, and once it connects back to the original source, then it makes a shape, right? So I zoom in a lot, and I get started on drawing around my pad. So I just kind of follow the shape of my pad, right? At least generally, and then I can go back and tweak anything that I need after. Cool. And then once you kind of have the shape of the pad, you leave it as like this like half circle thing, and kind of have these two end points be, you know, at least close to the same height. This one, it's kind of hard for me to tell sometimes, but I don't know, it looks close enough. And then you bring it over here as a straight line outside of the frame, and then up and around the entire frame, and then you connect it back here, and then you have the floating pad, and then you just have to kind of clean it up as you go. What I do now is I click on the video, go back to basic, and I do a drop shadow first. Just default 180, same thing that we did with the top video. Make sure it's black. That just looks like it's levitating a little bit more, as you see. So now I got to add the border. There's probably a much better way to add this border than what I do, but it's what I do and it works, so it's fine. I've done it a couple different ways, but how I've been doing it recently is I just drag one of these guys in there so I can get like a white text box, and I delete all the text, and I unlock this so I can shrink the size down like that. And I try to I normally just eyeball it, but I like to make all of my borders the same thickness, so maybe we'll go like 2, maybe 1.75. That looks pretty the same to me, so we're gonna bring it back down here. And you know, if you don't do the shadow, then you can put it below your video and it'll go behind the pad like that. But since I'm doing the shadow, it kind of takes the pop out of the border. So what I do is I do 2 sides separately, and I go one over here. There's 1,000 different ways that I've done this. This is kind of just the quickest and easiest way. However, you can't change the shape of the border. It's always going to be a rectangle. So if your pad doesn't have a straight edge right here, then it's going to look a little funky. But luckily for this video, I do have a straight edge, and I can make it line up just like that. So obviously you just want to kind of cover up all of the dead zones, the dead areas. You can always adjust the mask. So I'm just gonna move them down a little bit so that the shadow pops out a little bit more, and that looks good to me. And then what I do now is I just copy paste this into my timeline, and then I just drag it on top of this one, and I move it over to the left and do the same thing on the left side. And there we go. Now you kind of have the layout of my video done. Now you have to do the sheets. So I'm pretty sure like in terms of everything going on here so far, everything looks pretty solid. Watch it back. You can go to full screen mode too. Make sure everything's good. Oh, another thing that I forgot about is the video normally doesn't line up visually. For some reason, the screen recording video is normally earlier visually than my video. Maybe mine has audio delay. Maybe the screen recording just messes up the like visual to audio delay. But as you see, like the sticks aren't moving at the same time, so I like to make the sticks move at the same time. And how I do that is you have to detach the audio so that the audio stays the same, and then you can move the clips around all the way even over here, and the audio is still the same even though the visual isn't, right? So I just like to, it's typically around 7 to like 12. I think these are probably like milliseconds. 7 to 12, like see how that says plus 00000007. It's normally around 7 to like 12 range that I normally drag it until it kind of lines up. So we're gonna check this and see if it lines up. So they're still a little bit early compared to me, so I just gotta make them a little bit late. And maybe by 4. So what did we start with? We started with like 9, I think. So sometimes it's a little more, sometimes it's a little less, just depends on the video. And yeah, it looks like the sticks are moving for the most part at the same time. I like to use like big hits like that to really tell, or stick tricks if there is any. But for like these 2 double stops at the end, the sticks are moving relatively at the same time. As long as it's lined up visually, it just looks nicer, obviously. So I like to do that. And then, okay, so now for the part for me that takes the longest, you go into MuseScore and you transcribe the music. So typically there's music online already transcribed. However, for my videos, I can't use those just because I can't make them a transparent background. And also for my videos, I typically have the sheet music itself as white. I just think it looks cleaner. That's my personal preference. It also just depends on which background I use. But anyway, so you go into MuseScore and you transcribe the music. I'm not gonna do that because I've already done that. But just to kind of give you an idea of like what I do when I'm in here, let's say that this, this spree thing that I've written, let's say this is the Boston snare break. What I do is I Control A and I go to Properties and Appearance and I change the color to white. And obviously now you can't see it. So what you can do if you really want, I don't always do this, but you can go in and change the background to like black or something else that is going to make the sheet music pop. So that's thing number 1. And then thing number 2 is I like to make all of the bar lines, I like to make those visible, make them the same color as the sheet music themselves. And then I typically get rid of all of the end ones. So these ones here on the end, personally, I just don't like the way they look. I like it as more of like a continuation for some reason. I feel like it being a new line is enough to tell you that it's a new measure. So I make those invisible. I also make the staff line invisible, and what you do is you go to staff part properties and invisible staff lines. I just select that so that all you can see is literally just the notes, nothing in the background that distracts you from anything. And then any time signature changes, you make those the same color as the rest of the sheets. Cool. So there's also these like weird, I don't even know what these are. I make these invisible, as well as there they are. Numbers for like measure numbers. Normally just on each line. I shouldn't have made the background black because now I can't see all the things that I'm making invisible, but you kind of just guess and click. Anyway, so you make all those invisible, and then you have here, just like the sheets. And what I do now is I go File, Export. Export as a PNG because it's just easier to use for my editing software. So I just do PNG and I make sure that I select transparent background. That's a big one. So export, we're just gonna call this Boston Break. So now it's in here, where's it at? This one. So now what I do is I also use Canva for some of my sheets just to make them look pretty. The Boston snare break that I already did is here. So let's say that it isn't, and I'm gonna just put it back to totally normal. And these are the sheets that I exported, right? So you drag and drop the music over into your thing. And I just made the background blue just because that's kind of what it's gonna be. I just make it fit in the frame. Then I go to edit and shadows, and I do the glow shadow. And sometimes it's too much intensity and then I dial it down. Sometimes it's not enough intensity and I dial it up. Just depends on what you're looking for, right? So we are going to just leave it as normal. And then you have a nice little shadow behind your music. So it's easier to see, it pops, all that kind of stuff. And then what you do is you download it. And then again, transparent background, that is important. And then you download it. I'm not gonna do that just because I already have it. And then it's gonna download as a transparent background and it's just gonna be the music and just the shadows. And then you drag that into your timeline over here, which I already have it. And you just make it the same length as your video. So now we have the sheets. Now we have to figure out how to make them move. So this is another part that does take quite a while. So obviously you put the sheets on top of your background, which is right here, and all that stuff is below my video so that when the sheets scroll up, it goes behind my video, so they like disappear kind of thing. So what you do for the sheets is you make them fit in the frame, and then you get rid of them. You drag them all the way down here so that they're off screen, and then I go all the way to the beginning of the video, and you see this diamond right here. It's in transform. That's a keyframe. That's how I get the music to move up. So I add a keyframe so that it starts here, and then whenever the first note is, just kind of go around where the first note starts, and then you drag that up so that you can see it. So here is the first little intro. And now the music's there. And then you just kind of repeat this process for every line. So the next time that it gets to this 5-lit right here, I'm just kind of going to listen. That downbeat right there. We are going to drag it up a little bit more so that it keeps moving. And then it kind of just auto adds a keyframe once there is some. So now we have this. Now it's stopped there. So you just repeat this process for the entire break until you get to the end, and then I'll show you what you do there. I'm just gonna go ahead and rush through this real quick. Something that's really important here is, so I'm on the 7-lit, right? The 7/5. Make sure that you can still see the line above it when you get to the 7-lit, because if I were to just drag it up to here, you can see the 7-lit, right? But all the stuff before it, look, while it's playing, it's not really that visible anymore. So I like to make sure that that top line is just under my pad. So that's one little important thing that I make sure I don't forget. Boom, boom. And then on this last note, what I do, same thing, drag it up so that you can still see everything before it. And then I go to the end of the video, and then I just drag the music all the way up so that it's gone. So the almost finished product is this. There you go. Sweet. So last thing that you have to do is add the Playbar. This can be a little bit of a pain for me. It's just kind of annoying. So what I do is I add a title, and I typically do this neon one just because it's cool. It has like a cool little neon look. And I just drag it to the timeline. You don't have to do the neon one. You can just go to Just go like trending, look through them, see which ones you like in terms of like the art style. But so then you want to make this the length of your video, pull it down. So now you see there's this big thing that says text. What I do is I just make an I, and I choose a good font that's pretty neutral, just like nice straight line. What I've been using is Quicksand Bold, which makes the eye a little bit rounded. I don't know, something new, just I've been trying out. That looks pretty good to me. So what you do is you go to Advanced Edit. Let me show you that one more time. You just right click on here and Advanced Edit, or over here on the right, you can click Advanced. Cool. Now that we're here, we make the color that we want. So I am just gonna do like this pink color, because in the Boston show they have like a little bit of pink on their uniforms, I think, or maybe in the logo they have a little pink. You can do whatever color. I just like to do something that contrasts with the background. So I'm gonna do that pink, and then for the neon shadow thing, I'm just kind of gonna gradient that down to a darker color, and here's what it looks like. So here's our play bar for right now. Ultimately, it's kind of similar to the sheet music. It's just a lot of keyframing, except now there's X-axis keyframing. So we're gonna take this, we're gonna move it over, we're gonna find that first note that's played, which is right here. If you just kind of click there, then it's going to show you where that keyframe is. So you can do either over on top of the music like this. You can also, if you go to the color fill option and you just move the opacity to 0, then it leaves an outline like this. You can see like through and behind the play bar. And this is one that I've done before, and I do kind of like it if you want the play bar to be on top of the music. Now, to get it behind the music is very easy. I'm going to go back to Advanced Edit, and I'm going to fill it back in, opacity 100. All you got to do is just switch this with that. Now these are just flip-flopped, and now my text is underneath my sheet music. I like this one because I think it just highlights the note that is being played a little bit more, and I don't know, it just looks kind of clean, and it's something new that nobody's really done before, and I like to just stay unique. Now, you're on that first note. The play bar is there. Now what you have to do is kind of keyframe every note. You don't have to do every single note. If these notes are like the same length apart, like these are, then I can go to the third note, which is this one. Let's go back here, and let's add a keyframe. And then now we're gonna go to the third note, move it to there, and up a little bit. And now on those first 3 notes, here's what we have. There you go. You kind of just copy this idea and do it for all of the little checkpoints in the snare break. So then this next one starts here, and I'm going to find the last note of the 16th note. When it switches between bars, there's going to be a bigger jump just because there's more space between like this note and this note than there is between this note and this note. That's just because there's a bar line in the way. So this is the first way that you can do it, which works. A little bit more efficient of a way that I like to do is so we have this first note here, right? Back to just square one, bar's not moving, but I like to just find the last note of the line. So that rim shot right there, which is up here, that's the last note of the line. I'm gonna add a keyframe so that it goes all the way from where it started to this last note. So now we have the start and the finish checkpoints. Everything in between is probably going to be a little off, so you're going to have to go back and adjust a little bit. Here's what it'll look like. It starts and ends in time, but you can tell everything in between is kind of wishy-washy. So you got to go in and find those little checkpoints that we were doing. But it kind of gets the major 2 checkpoints done for you, so that you don't have to worry about them. And also it keeps you from having to move the y-axis, which is why I do that. So as you saw, this one was a little bit ahead, and then I'm going to go to the next downbeat, and it's nice and in time, so I'm going to add a keyframe there. Go to the first 16th note. As you see, it's quite ahead. Going to move it there. I'm going to go to the last 16th note before the downbeat. It's a little behind now, and then the next downbeat right here, it's a little behind, and then that flam, a little behind, and then the buzz, which I think is right here. Yeah, that's kind That's nice and in time. The two checkpoints that I always have are the beginning and the end of the bar, because the play bar always kind of has to jump pretty quickly between the last and first note of a measure, just because the bar line's in the way. So I make sure that I have all those checkpoints at least. So the last note of the triplet is right here, and then the first note of the next bar is all the way over here. So it's gonna have a pretty big jump from there, as you see. The start of the 5-lit, little head. Cool. And then when you get to the end of a line, getting it back to the beginning of the next line is a little bit tricky sometimes. What I do is make a keyframe on the next possible millisecond or whatever these little ticks, and I just put the x-axis all the way at the max, which is 9999. And what that does is it kind of just gets rid of it, right? And then I make a keyframe right before the next downbeat, and I just leave it at 9999, and then this next one back to 0, and then I can start it over at the bar right there. So what that does is it kind of just restarts the idea. So now we have all the checkpoints, I think. We're gonna watch it and just make sure. There you go. Doesn't look too bad. So you're gonna repeat that for all of the measures, all of the notes. Let's go back to the beginning and let's kind of fade this play bar in a little bit better. I typically just add an opacity keyframe and I'll drag it all the way down, and then I'll add another opacity keyframe and all the way back up, and then just kind of fades in, as you see. So the very last thing, and we're almost done, is you get to the last note. What I do is I just fade it out. So we're at this last note here. The music's gonna go away. The play bar is kind of gonna stay there. That doesn't look great, does it? I have a fix. Let's add an opacity keyframe and let's fade it out like that. And there it goes. So here's what the final product looks like. And then you have a Davis J video. Looking pretty good. I'll show you one way that I used to do, which is a lot faster, but doesn't look as clean. So let's go back to MuseScore. What you can do is the screen recording tip that I showed you earlier, you just screen record the playback of the video. And as you see, it has its own play bar going. And you just screen record the sheet music and it provides a play bar for you. And then you can go into your editing software and you can try to remove the background if you wanted to do that, but it's kind of hard. So you can do like a screen recording of the sheet music and then you just keyframe it up and the play bar is already there for you. That's another way you can do it. A little less customization options in that route, but nonetheless, it's easier. So yeah, so that's how you make a Davis J video. Hopefully this was easy to follow along. I've never really done this before. Hopefully it was helpful, and hopefully somebody takes this and uses it for their own maybe. If you like these kind of videos and have any more questions about any of the other things that I do, I'm more than happy to make some cool long form content on some tutorial stuff like this, because this is kind of fun. So hopefully you like it, hopefully it helps, and I'll see you next time. Thanks guys.